I contracted HIV on purpose. Now people ask me to give it to them.
What the What is sexual about wanting to chase for HIV?
People do it for different reasons.
I'm asking you why you do it.
I'm not trying to shock you, and I appreciate that a lot of people do find it a very distressing topic.
At the end of the day, you're playing with your life by choice because you want to have more pleasure.
But pleasure is very important.
Nah. Like, there's not so many things that can give you extra pleasure that doesn't involve you having bareback sex.
The fear that you're gonna get HIV is actually, it's not a little bit more pleasure. It ruins your intimacy for good.
What I'm going to say now is probably going to really upset you and probably really sicken you.
You have to appreciate this is a lot to take in. I just need to be left alone right now because this is just mad.
The term bug chasing refers to someone who's HIV negative but wants to be infected with the HIV virus. Bug chasing is actually a very small proportion of the gay community, and people who are HIV positive, the number that deliberately bug chased is again really quite a small proportion. I've been described as an ethical gifter in that I have a conversation with someone, so I would never go up and have sex with someone randomly without first having a discussion about my status.
Why would anybody want to be given HIV?
For all sorts of reasons. Some see it as a fetish, some see it as a power play situation, some people want it so they can relax.
Will you seek any medical help for that at all?
I will do at some point.
So you're
yes.
gonna knowingly give yourself something and then use an NHS service that's already strained because you're fulfilling some sort of weird fetish or fantasy?
I didn't contract it for fetish or fantasy reasons.
No, but will you use, my question is, like, will you then use, you've knowingly given yourself something and then are you going to then use, are you going to go private so you're paying for it yourself because it's something you've chosen to give yourself, or are you going to use the NHS?
I won't be going private. I will be using the NHS at some point when I decide to go on medication. However, there's also the argument that people who take PrEP use up NHS budgets as well.
I've been struggling to actually say anything because I have been living with HIV for 10 years. And although right now I've got a handle on it mentally, from the very beginning I've been undetectable, no risk to my partners. But I know a lot of people don't have that privilege, and people kill themselves after diagnosis when they realize what the reality is, right? That said, for a lot of people mentally, the gayest thing you can do is get HIV. So I think it's no surprise that some people derive sexual pleasure, and it's part of people's sexual behaviors.
I don't for one moment try to take anything away from you and your experiences or negate what's happened to you. Before I decide to have sex with someone who asks me to give them HIV, I have quite long conversations with them before I meet to make sure they are fully aware of what the implications will be to them personally.
How noble.
I'm sorry?
I said how noble. So what is the law in terms of giving people HIV?
There's something called reckless transmission, and if I passed on my HIV to someone who didn't know my status, that I hadn't disclosed it to, if they weren't aware of my status, I hadn't used a condom or taken other precautions, I could be charged with UBH. Personally, I've never had sex with someone who hasn't known my status, or if they haven't known my status, that I haven't had the type of sex that would they be at risk from contracting HIV.
Do you know how many people have contracted HIV from you?
Not everyone chooses to tell me, but yeah, I've got a pretty good idea of how many have tested positive after having sex with me.
What's your rough estimate?
I don't really want to, I prefer not to answer that. I've never heard back from anyone that I've had sex with that has regretted a positive test result afterwards. I do know of other people who have regretted it. Maybe it just goes to show because of those outcomes that the approach I take is the moral, is the ethical approach to it, and helps minimise the risk of someone reacting badly to their diagnosis. Or maybe I'm kidding myself.
What's the sexual element about putting yourself and putting your life at risk and putting other people's lives at risk? Where's the sexual element in that?
I didn't have a sexual element to it myself when I was chasing. It was for practical purposes so that I could relax more during sex.
Is there a sexual element to giving HIV to other people for you?
Not always. Although people approach me to have sex with them, to infect them with HIV, I still have to have some sort of sexual attraction or chemistry to them.
So you wouldn't say you fetishise the actual act of giving somebody HIV? You know what I mean? Like, yes.
It's just the attraction of having sex with someone.
What do you do for a living?
I can sort of anticipate the reaction that my answer will generate. I work in health services. It's not a clinical role, but it's an administrative role.
That's definitely a twist.
We're going to have a break, so you can obviously reflect
I don't know yet. I just feel everyone's just talking at me and asking me questions and shit. I just need to be left alone right now because this is just mad.
What was your life like growing up?
So I lived with my mum and my stepdad and my younger brother. It was a fairly normal family life. I had a good education. I lost my virginity to a man when I was 14, and I met my wife to be at university, and we had a generally good relationship. I still always considered that I was gay. When I was married, I did sometimes have sex with men, but when I did, my focus was always on as much protection as I could possibly have. If I had spread something to my wife through my own actions, I don't think I could have lived with myself. And so I took every possible precaution. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, because that's ironic. Oh, I wouldn't want to give her, I wouldn't
don't-
live with yourself, but you continuously would go out and have unprotected sex with men.
Any sexual activity I had with men when I was married, and I was still having sex with my wife as well, it was totally protected. It was only after I got divorced, it felt as if I was let off the leash almost in terms of sex. I knew what the risks were with having unprotected sex, and I knew at some point I probably would get HIV. But at that time, when I first started, I wasn't looking to deliberately get HIV, and that just sort of evolved over time.
Why, if you want to have unprotected sex, why not go on PrEP? Why contract HIV?
Yeah, I know. Certainly when I first started thinking about becoming HIV positive, PrEP wasn't an option. When I consciously made the decision to chase, PrEP was available, but because of other medication that I was on and the process I'd had to go through to get stable for another health condition, it really put me off going on PrEP and adding something else into the mix as well. It took 10 years for me to contract HIV. Towards the end of that period, I decided that I would then start to actively seek HIV positive guys to have sex with. What I'm going to say now is probably going to really upset you and probably really sicken you. So I then started seeking out guys who were happy to blood slam me, and that is injecting me with their blood. I sought out 3 guys who were HIV positive, who were happy to inject me, and I arranged to meet them. A few weeks later, I tested myself and I was HIV positive. When I got my test results, it was almost a bit of an anticlimax. It wasn't what I was expecting at all, and you still look disgusted.
Yeah, because you do disgust me.
Okay, then I appreciate everyone has a different idea about it.
What do you mean a different idea? You
So-
say things like you're justifying.
But some of
What
them
it
are
is that you
justifiable,
do.
and I feel
don't
like you are
understand how
closed
it
off
is.
to it.
So-
No, I'm not closed off
You
to
are
it. If I was
closed off
closed
to
off
it.
to it, I wouldn't be sat here listening to chat.
No, I think
If I
you
was closed
are.
off about it, I would not be sat here listening to him
Look.
chat. But the things that you are saying, you cannot expect me to sit here and be all smiley with you. What are you expecting from me?
I can relate to one thing you said quite deeply. Even though I don't share your decision to gift people, I have also experienced what it feels like to be always wondering when you're gonna get HIV. Since I contracted HIV, despite everything that happened and all the pain, like I cried for 6 months initially. I have never had better sex than after, because I don't have to worry about that one thing, so I get that. And it saddens me that most people won't give it enough space to hear that. Like, this is unique. Most people will judge you before they even
But there's
consider.
no.
But this is what I'm talking about.
No, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're playing with your life by choice
But I
because you
didn't.
want to have more pleasure.
But pleasure is very important.
Sex is sex.
No.
Yeah, it is. Sex is
Nah.
sex. Sex is sex. Just because you want a bit more pleasure in bed. Like, there's not so many things that can give you extra pleasure that doesn't involve you having bareback sex. And doesn't involve you getting HIV and then giving other people HIV.
The fear that you're gonna get HIV
Can
is
be-
actually, it's not a little bit more pleasure. It ruins your intimacy for good.
I think it's genuinely like heartbreaking that people put themselves in that position and feel like they have to put themselves in that position. I really think that's so deeply sad. But on the flip side of it, I do think that there's so many issues with that.
So it's a condition that is treatable.
Yeah, but then you're also putting more strain on the NHS, is what I'm saying. I'm gay, I've got a lot of gay friends, and I know people that have HIV. I don't know anyone that's actively wanted to have HIV, but I've seen people going through that, and I've been there for people that have gone through that.
And I understand why you and a lot of other people think like that
Yeah,
as well.
But I understand why you feel like I get the side of it where you like that freeing moment then of it being like there's not this looming thing.
I totally get where you're coming from as well. For so many people, it's a life-changing moment and very traumatic. I'm not here to try and justify myself to anyone. I'm here to explain why I do the things that I do, but that's not necessarily justifying what I do. The way sometimes I think that this discussion has gone is that it seems that everyone in the gay community is wanting to be HIV positive, but it's actually quite a small proportion. In fact, I'd say it's like a niche within a niche.
Why did you decide to wear a mask? And would you ever show your face, given what you've told us?
Because it is such an emotive subject, both HIV in general, and particularly bug chasing and gift giving, then I wouldn't feel happy talking generally and openly about my choices and about my status. I'm happy with the choices I've made. I don't regret them. Whether I'll do them again in the same way in another life, I don't know. But I don't think the vast majority of people would ever truly understand my reasons for bug chasing, gift giving. It just doesn't seem logical to, I think, the majority of people, even within the gay community.
Even though I understand where you're coming from, I feel like it's almost undoing the work I spent 5 years in
Sure.
activism. This is not the most triggering thing that's happened today, because I actually get you. I don't agree with you,
Sure.
but I see where it's coming from. But what this has brought up is how a lot of people, particularly straight people, don't pay attention to the fact that society f***ed us and then points fingers at us for having issues, valid issues, and fetishizing the pain that we carry.
I'm not trying to shock you, and I appreciate that a lot of people do find it a very distressing topic. I'm not doing it to create that sort of reaction. Thank you though for listening to me and even if you don't agree, for at least listening to what I've had to say. I appreciate that.
Likewise, I think this must have been really difficult for you. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
That was difficult. That was really difficult for me. I can tell that it was difficult for you as well.
Oh, mate.
Yeah.
That's what I've just stayed quiet because I have nothing like the arrogance, the narcissism, the entitlement, the privilege.
I see different things. I see oppression and potentially...
Oppression?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you see, this is one of the things that I don't think you perceive.
I think it's really
You
funny.
can't expect anyone to feel empathetic for people of your community that are like that.
I think the end of it is there's just way too much to unwrap here.
Well,
Right,
a lot of
I'm
tumors
cutting.
are
I'm done.
benign.
I'm done now.